to the first episode of the Unreported Story, where we cover the stories mainstream media has left behind. I'm your host, Camille Rosansky. I decided to start this channel to fill the gap in stories that received little media attention and to give context to what viewers see on the news. I hope you'll stick around to hear today's story. Today we'll be looking at a relatively recent conflict that received barely any media attention, amidst the rest of the world's attention focused on the Russo-Ukrainian and Israel-Hamas war. Armenia, a rather small ex-Soviet republic which has been embroiled in a territorial conflict with his neighbor, Azerbaijan, another former Soviet republic. Both countries are located in the Caucasus region of the Eurasian continent and stand at the crossroads of Europe and Asia, the bridge between East and West. The region's long history had many empires that conquered these lands, from the Assyrian, Babylonian, Roman, Mongol, Iranian, and most recently, Russia. The history of tensions between Armenia and Azerbaijan can mostly be linked to the imperialist expansion policies of the Russian Empire, with the later Soviet Union's control of the region and the redrawing of borders on ethnic lines, spreading the seeds of chaos. However, this is not an isolated case. A plethora of former Soviet republics now in the modern day face ethnic conflicts and separatist movements that have sprung up since the collapse of communism, with thanks in part to the Soviet Union. The country of Georgia with Abkhazia and South Ossetia, Moldova with Transnistria, and Ukraine, as we see in the news, with Crimea, Luhansk, and Donetsk becoming breakaway region. And even its own great mother Russia could not avoid the wave of separatist forces, as it was rocked by the Chechen wars in the 90s and early 2000s. All of these conflicts could constitute their own separate episode. However, for time, we will only focus on one today, the Nagorno-Karabakh Conflict. Let's get started. Now, it's important to note that I started writing the script back in September and had to make changes to it since the latest developments in the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict. By the end of World War I, the collapse of both Russia and the Ottoman empires was inevitable, with both showing signs of political and societal decay for many decades before. The Russian Empire had failed to modernize and had remained under the authoritarian rule of the Tsar and based in a feudal society for hundreds of years, in which 80% of the population were serfs bound to their land under the rule of the rich landowner class. This, combined with an increase in government corruption, the reactionary policies of Tsar Nicholas I against reformists, and the catastrophic Russian losses in World War I, led to the Bolshevik Revolution, which would depose and execute the Russian royal family and lead to the installation of the communist government by Vladimir Lenin. The Ottoman Empire had already been in decline since the late 17th century, dubbed the sick man of Europe. The empire's decline was not immediate, and this decline can be traced back to the Ottomans' loss at the Battle of Vienna in 1683. Which led to the invasion of Hungary to the Austrian Empire, and from there gradually over time more territory would be lost. All this to say, by the time these empires were collapsing, nationalist and separatist movements had been brewing in the region for some time, leading into the Caucasus campaign of World War I, which was a series of battles between the Entente-aligned Russia and Axis-aligned Ottomans for dominance in the region. The three main ethnic groups, Armenians, Azeris, Georgians, took their side in the war, with Armenians mostly aligned with Russia and the latter with the Ottomans. The campaign would be halted before the war ended in 1917, following the collapse of the Russian Empire, with the Bolsheviks pulling out of the war and signing the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk between Russians and Ottoman forces, and later the Ottomans signing their own treaty granting independence to Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan. Following the aftermath of World War I, many new states popped up in and around the region of Eurasia, specifically Eastern and Southern Europe, as well as the Caucasus. Many of these states, however, were short-lived, as the Russian Empire, now the Soviet Union, with its goal of spreading communism across Europe, invaded and incorporated several recently declared independent countries into the Union as Soviet republics. Before all three gained independence, a short-lived Transcaucasian Republic existed for a month. However, with each group having a vested interest in statehood, the republic fell apart, with Georgia declaring independence, first establishing the Democratic Republic of Georgia in 1918, with Armenia and Azerbaijan quickly doing the same. However, by 1921, Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia had becoming republics in part of the Soviet Union. At first, the three were merged into one state, the Transcaucasian Socialist Federative Republic, 21, lasting until 1936, when they split apart into three Soviet republics respectively. Around the same time, the creation of the Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Oblast in 1923, located in the Azerbaijan Soviet Socialist Republic. Note, autonomous oblasts were different than Soviet republics. They were much smaller regions in the larger USSR, which gave a large amount of regional autonomy from their respective republics. It's important to note that at the time, in 1923, Nagorno-Karabakh was home to a 95% ethnically Armenian population within the Azerbaijan SSR. The issue of the Karabakh status remained dormant until after Stalin's death, when discussions started in 1963. Calls from Armenians in Karabakh to have the territory either be transferred to Armenia or put under Russian control. This would lead to major riots in the Nagorno-Karabakh Autonomous Oblast's capital, Stepanakert, and the deaths of 18 Armenians. Following the appointment of Gorbachev as the president of the Soviet Union in 1985, his implementation of the perestroika, or the restructuring of the state, and glasnost, which was openness to discussion of political and social issues, these policies helped the Armenian population of Nagorno-Karabakh suppress the issues of Karabakh unification to Armenia. The Armenian leaders in the region argued the Azeri communist leaders had been Azerifying the region, citing a lack of Armenian language textbooks in school and Armenian broadcast channels. In the late 1980s, however, the Armenian population of Nagorno-Karabakh had dwindled to only 3/4 of the previous 95%. After the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991, both Armenia and Azerbaijan declared independence. Following this, on November 26, 1991, Azerbaijan abolished the status of the Nagorno-Karabakh Oblast, rearranging the administrative divisions and within the country and bringing the territory under direct control of Azerbaijan. Around the same time, the Nagorno-Karabakh legislation, which was the autonomous regional governing body in Stepanakert, passed a bill that proclaimed the intentions of the region to join Armenia after gaining independence. Another important note to the autonomous oblast was that if any of the republics in the Soviet Union decided to leave the Union, the autonomous oblast had the right to declare a referendum for whether or not its population wished to stay with the republic or stay with the Union. So the referendum was held in Nagorno-Karabakh, which resulted in a 99% vote to join Armenia. The referendum was boycotted by the Azeri population living within Nagorno-Karabakh, so it resulted in only ethnically Armenians voting in it. After this referendum, tensions escalated into war and conflict between both countries, which lasted from 1988 to 1994, and this is collectively referred to as the First Nagorno-Karabakh War. Armenians having a strength of 30 to 40,000 troops, and Azerbaijan having 42,000. The war was brutal and led to many ethnic cleansings and pogroms against both Armenians and Azerbaijanis. Around 20,000 casualties in total. This also led to many Armenians and Azerbaijanis being displaced and many forced to flee from Nagorno-Karabakh, leading to a whole town being abandoned. I won't get into the aspects of the war itself, but just to briefly summarize important points. In 1992, after 4 years of Nagorno-Karabakh being isolated from the world, the Armenian armed forces established the Lakhim corridor, opening up a passage from Nagorno-Karabakh to Armenia to allow movement. By 1993, Azeri forces were exhausted and depleted, with the country recruiting boys as young as 16 and even Bajudeens from Afghanistan to fight. The Armenian army had successful campaigns in repelling Azeri forces from Nagorno-Karabakh and even had a clear path to march on Baku, Azerbaijan's capital. In the summer of 1993, Armenian offensive forces were successful in capturing Azerbaijani regions located around the area of Nagorno-Karabakh, the regions of Agdam, Fuzuli, Jabrail, Kadbali, and Zangilan. Moving forward, by 1994, the war had come to an end and a ceasefire was established, resulting in an Armenian victory, which led to Nagorno-Karabakh becoming a de facto independent state and at the same time de facto part of Armenia per the Bishkek Protocol. The Azeri territories captured by Armenians remained in control of the Armenian armed forces from 1994 to 2020. A frozen conflict continued with intermittent border clashes between Armenia and Azerbaijan, with the largest being in 2008 and 2016. 2016 was referred to as the 4-Day War, where Azerbaijan regained territory from Nagorno-Karabakh and both sides accused each other of breaking ceasefire treaties, claimed victory. It's unknown why the conflict started, with many speculating it could be due to the drop in oil prices and the worsening of the economy in Azerbaijan, leading to a rise in tensions. But since that time, the situation escalated, leading to the outbreak of the Second Nagorno-Karabakh War. Fighting broke out in September of 2020, with soldiers being killed on both sides. The fighting was more intense than previously, with long, heavy-range artillery weapons, missile strikes, and propaganda used by both sides on social media. Around 185 civilians on both sides were killed. The conflict lasted 6 weeks before ending with the capture of Susha, the second largest city, by Azeri forces. A ceasefire agreement was negotiated by Russia, which sent sent peacekeeping forces to the region. The agreement gave Azerbaijan back the territory it lost in the First Nagorno-Karabakh War, established Russian peacekeeping force control on the Lahim corridor, and evacuations of Armenians who had been living in the Azeri territories. Peace did not last long as border clashes arose in September 2022. 2 days of large-scale fighting by Armenian and Azerbaijani troops took place, leading to 300 casualties and around 7,500 displaced Armenians. The conflict started when Azerbaijan launched an unprovoked invasion of Armenia on the morning of September 12th, leading to an Azeri occupation of 140 kilometers squared of Armenian territory within the province of Sinyuk and Gergakhankunik. A ceasefire was broken by Russia the next day. However, it was immediately broken within minutes, with each side casting blame on the other. By September 16th, another ceasefire was brokered. However, only days later, on September 21st, Armenian Minister of Defense reported Azeri forces launching mortars and large caliber firearms at Armenians, leading to an injured soldier. Ceasefire agreement was reported by Armenians to be broken by Azeris 2 more times before hostilities stopped. Reports and videos started circulating online about war crimes committed by the Azeri armed forces against Armenians, including the mutilation of a female Armenian soldier, and the videos of Azeri forces came out showing the executions of Armenian POWs. The violence came to an end, but the next conflict arose in the blockade of Nagorno-Karabakh in December of 2022. The Azerbaijani government claimed the blockade was for environmental reasons, leading to citizen protesters blockading the Lahim corridor on December 12, 2022, 2 months after escalation started. This led to humanitarian concerns as it essentially cut off food and supplies from entering the region, leading to a humanitarian crisis. Many countries, international organizations, and human rights observers condemned the blockade, citing it as a form of hybrid warfare and genocide to drive out the Armenian population. After almost 9 months, the blockade ended when on September 19, 2023, Azeri forces launched a full-scale invasion of Nagorno-Karabakh. The offensive only lasted a day, with the Artsakh government agreeing to a ceasefire by the next day and agreeing to cooperate on integrating the territory into Azerbaijan. Hours after the ceasefire agreement took place, Armenians started fleeing the region to Armenia proper, fearing ethnic cleansing by Azeri forces. By October, over 100,000 Armenians had fled the region, only estimates citing between 50 and 1,000 ethnic Armenians left, according to the UN. The ceasefire agreement led to the disbandment of the Artsakh armed forces and the dissolution of the Republic of Artsakh on January 1st, 2024. Artsakh officials were arrested, and the president of Azerbaijan would visit the capital, Stepanakert, raising the flag of Azerbaijan there. This pretty much sees the end of the decades-long conflict, as stated by the president of the Armenian National Assembly, Alan Simeon himself, who says Armenia will recognize Azerbaijan's territorial integrity and Northern Karabakh as a part of that. Armenia will be working on peace talks with Azerbaijan to return the displaced families from Nagorno-Karabakh with their displacement, and with the eventual goal of the Azerbaijani government to hopefully repopulate the region with Azeris. It seems that at least for now, the conflict has settled. Will there be a peace between the two countries? I highly doubt so, though we will have to see what the future holds. Since the Republic of Artsakh will be dissolved by the start of 2024, the issue of independent statehood or unification with Armenia seems virtually non-existent. More likely, Armenia will advocate to allow ethnic Armenians to return to the region to live in peace if they so choose to, though I doubt many would want to now with the region under Azerbaijan's control and fears of potential ethnic cleansing or more conflicts breaking out. And that is it for this episode of The Unreported Story. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video so you can be notified when I upload more videos. I'd also like to say that this is the first episode, is a test run to see which format of media I'd like, and I'll be testing out video and audio formats, so make sure to tune in to give me some feedback on what you think and which will you prefer. I'll start doing research on the next topic, not sure what it's going to be. I have a couple ideas in mind, so I hope to see you again for the next episode. Stay safe.